And sit down.
Yep. Do this. Cool. Camera, not me.
This one?
If it's more this one. Always this one.
My name is Dylan. I am from La Quinta, California.
Hi, I'm Tina, and I am from Crestline.
My name is Adam Orta, and I'm from Apple Valley, California.
My name is Lauren Kelly, and I am from La Habra, California.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee for sure. Tea's for... Yeah, never mind. Coffee.
Coffee.
My favorite drink is coffee.
Would you rather go hang gliding or whitewater rafting?
Whitewater rafting. I would rather go whitewater rafting because I am afraid of heights. So I do like roller coasters and stuff like that, but I close my eyes most of the time.
The first thing I'd ask if I was frozen for 100 or a lot of years, probably be, are we still on Earth, or can I get food?
A skill I would like to master would be to sing.
I'd love to master the guitar.
Nope. Also woodworking. I would like to master woodworking.
Between reading a book and going out with friends, I'm absolutely a going out with friends person.
And singing. I would like to be a singing woodworker.
Beautiful.
The most interesting place I've been. Oh gosh. I don't know. I think Calico Ghost Town was very interesting when I went there.
What is something that a ton of people are obsessed with, you just don't get the point of?
Friends. The show Friends. I still don't really know what it's about, but people always reference it, and I don't know what they're talking about.
Nice.
The most embarrassing song that I've memorized is probably Kiss the Girl from Little Mermaid. I basically have it memorized, and it's wonderful. I'm actually not ashamed, to be honest. It's a wonderful song.
Okay. Ooh. Hold on. Okay. Hold on. Okay.
I could give you a 40-minute presentation on like just Star Wars. Like, if you want a Star Wars throwdown, let's go. I know more than you about Star Wars. So.
If I didn't have to sleep, I would do what I did in high school and play World of Warcraft for 48 hours straight.
Cook. Probably cook. Hang out with my grandson.
Always Disney. I love Disney. I'm definitely a Disneyland fan.
I never want to go back to Arizona. Take that, Arizona.
Texas. Texas is terrible. It's a terrible place.
In as much detail as you can, recount to me what you would consider your testimony.
What I would consider my testimony would be that
Okay. I think starting is always the weirdest part, you know? Like, where do you start? I grew up in a pretty normal household. I have an older sister. Parents were together in my early childhood, but I grew up in a house that didn't know God. My parents would sort of come in and out of faith when it was seemingly most convenient. Both of my parents drank really heavily when I was a child. And then toward the later years of elementary school, my parents started to split up. months at a time. And so the conversation of divorce was one that was pretty casual and normal in my family. I was always kind of waiting and expecting for my parents to divorce. Yeah, in my early childhood, while I was in elementary school, I started to become really angry and bitter toward my parents because of their alcoholism. Middle school was, for me, was my time of learning how to mask and cover up my pain. And so I spent most of my time away from home and spending time with friends and spending the night at their houses, and really anything that I could do to keep myself away from my house was my goal in middle school. Toward the middle of high school, I started to really struggle with my depression and anxiety. And in hindsight, I think I always exhibited those symptoms of the two, but it wasn't until high school that became a real struggle for me. Due to the mess of emotional struggle and anger, I started to distance myself from both my family and my peers. But like most high school students, I still wanted to be known. I still wanted to be loved, and I still had that deep desire to know that I was valued by someone, which I found out that through relationships, I was able to find something to sort of fill that void in my life. And so through process of relationship after relationship and girlfriend after girlfriend, I was finding ways to seek that value and that worth that I was ultimately looking for. And so relationships at that point became my God. So I was using things like moving in with my girlfriend, staying up way too late every single night, playing video games, trying not to think about my pain. I eventually started getting into smoking cigarettes, just whatever I could do to replace the responsibility of looking at my pain and trying to figure out how I can handle it and deal with it and heal from it. So after I was out of high school, I entered what would be a 6-year relationship. And at this point, I felt like I had everything pretty much figured out. I was receiving my value that I was looking for through my relationship, and my worth was being reaffirmed through that relationship. And I was independent from my parents, and so I felt capable. And I was just kind of going through the cycles and through the motions of everything that life was giving me, and not really paying attention to the pain that was there. And so on the surface, I had it all together, and I was stable and I was happy. But really on the inside, I was actually drowning. As far as I was concerned, even if there was a God, I didn't need him. So about 3 years into that relationship, and about 3 years after high school, I would come to a point where my life would change forever. March 24th, 2012 was the day that I came to know Christ. Through circumstances only made possible by God. That was the day that I realized all the years past, I was struggling to know what I believed about myself and what I believed about God. What ended up happening was there was sort of a duality that was taking place. I had this moment, I had this encounter with Christ, and I had this step into faith, but I still had this life that I was living entirely in sin. It took that depression that was already there, And it took that anxiety that was already in my heart and it amplified it, because now I had this shame of sin that was added to the weight. And so I would spend I would spend the first 3 years walking in my faith completely blind and completely in the dark, because there was no surrender to back it up. Summer of 2015 was another life-changing moment for me. My fiance told me that I wasn't worthy of being a husband. I wasn't worth marrying. I had been rejected from my career that I was striving for and applying for. Essentially, I had nothing from that life that I tried to protect. I was struggling so heavily with suicidal thoughts, and which would eventually lead me to attempts at suicide. The second time that I was pushed to an attempt to take my life was a year after. I think this point was when I was at the darkest point in my life and in my walk with God. I remember that at that point in my life, I was so led by my depression, and I was so enveloped in my depression that I had such a numb feeling. It was such a numb state of mind to where I would wake up in the day, but I wouldn't feel awake, and I would walk places, but I wouldn't feel like I was walking. It would feel like I was in this dream and I was just floating everywhere, and it was a very empty feeling. And I remember feeling very little purpose. Again, like my life meant nothing, that I was going to mean nothing to anyone, that my life had no worth or value. It was the deepest sense of loneliness that I had ever felt in my life, to where I felt that I was in such a place in my life that no one would understand the darkness and the pain that I was experiencing. And it was at that moment that I had an anxiety attack. My anxiety attack was so heavy that I was convulsing on the floor and struggling to breathe. And in an attempt to stop it, in an attempt to finally find freedom in my pain, I grabbed a knife from my kitchen counter, and I sat on my floor with my knife to my wrist to take the final cut. And I remember feeling in that moment God's presence so heavily with me. The only way that I can describe it is that it felt as though an emergency responder had bust through my door and come to cradle me, and just to hold me on the floor and to let me know that everything was okay. And I remember feeling and hearing God's voice in that moment, and He affirmed me that He was there, and that there was still something worth living for.